Your history teacher lied to you. Not intentionally, but they lied all the same. When you think of ancient Egypt's greatest pharaohs, you picture Ramesses, Tutankhamun, the names carved into your textbooks. But here's what got left out: for almost 100 years, Egypt wasn't ruled by Egyptians at all. It was ruled by a black African kingdom from the south. They conquered the pyramids. They wore the crown. They commanded the Nile. And then, somehow, they vanished from history. Today, we're uncovering the empire that rewrote the ancient world, and exposing why the world decided to forget. Let's rewind to 760 BCE. Deep in northeastern Africa, in what we now call Sudan, a kingdom called Kush was rising. For centuries, the Kushites had been Egypt's trading partners and occasional rivals. But something shifted. They weren't content to be secondary players anymore. They were building their own distinct civilization, their own script, their own identity, their own economic powerhouse. And they were watching Egypt fracture. By the 8th century BCE, Kush had become unstoppable. Gold mines flooded their treasury. Iron workshops produced weapons and tools at scale. Control of trade routes meant wealth flowing in from 3 continents. Their army was legendary. But Egypt? Egypt was falling apart. Central authority was crumbling. The priesthoods were fragmenting. The moment was there for the taking. And a Kushite king named Pi was about to seize it. Around 747 BCE, Pi didn't march in with brutality. He was smarter than that. He positioned himself as the restorer of Egypt's true order, the guardian of the old gods and old traditions. It was masterful. As he advanced northward, city after city surrendered or submitted without a fight. His claim to legitimacy was so convincing that Egyptians themselves accepted him. Within years, one man unified the entire Nile Valley under Kushite rule. Egypt's golden age wasn't ending. It was just changing hands. For nearly a century, Kushite pharaohs sat on Egypt's throne. They ruled from Memphis. They commissioned temples. They commanded the priesthoods. They negotiated with the Assyrian Empire and Mediterranean powers as equals. Pyramids were being constructed, but under Kushite authority now. The Nile's resources flowed through Kushite hands. To the outside world, Egypt still appeared supreme. But the truth was known in every court that mattered: Africa's greatest power had shifted south. Then came 664 BCE. The Assyrian Empire, history's most brutal military machine, invaded Egypt with overwhelming force. The Kushites fought with everything they had, but they were outnumbered and defeated. They retreated south to their homeland. And this is the critical moment: after that defeat, the historical record about Kush suddenly becomes sparse. Vague. Almost deliberately downplayed. It's as if someone decided the Kushite achievement should be forgotten. But Kush didn't collapse. It transformed. The kingdom relocated its capital to Meroe, deep in Sudan's interior. And here's where it gets remarkable: freed from the burden of maintaining Egyptian traditions, the Kushites became fully themselves. They developed their own script, their own art, their own religious practices. They built hundreds of pyramids, many still standing today. They weren't copies of Egypt anymore. They were something richer, something distinctly Kushite. And they became wealthier and more influential than before. Meroe wasn't just a city, it was a cosmopolitan hub. Merchants from Arabia, the Mediterranean, and India crowded its markets. Steel and iron production operated at industrial scale. Queens ruled as sovereigns, not as consorts or figureheads, but as military commanders and political leaders. The artwork that survives shows them as warriors, strategists, equals to any king. This was a civilization operating on principles that were centuries ahead of most of its contemporaries. Advanced metallurgy, sophisticated governance, gender roles that defied later European assumptions. So why is Kush absent from your education? Why does Egypt get all the glory while Kushite achievement vanishes into footnotes? The answer matters. Colonial-era historians and archaeologists didn't ignore Kush by accident. They systematically downplayed African accomplishment. When they studied Kush at all, they portrayed it as derivative, a pale copy of Egypt. They erased Kushite agency and independence. They invented narratives of Egyptian dominance where none existed. This pattern repeated across African history, the systematic erasure of African power, innovation, and leadership. Modern archaeology is finally correcting the record. Excavations at Meroe have revealed artifacts that rewrite the narrative, temple inscriptions in Kushite script, jewelry of extraordinary technical skill, metallurgical tools showing advanced knowledge. Scholars are now presenting Kush as what it actually was, an independent superpower with its own distinctive culture, not a reflection of someone else's greatness. The evidence has been there all along. We just weren't looking, or we were trained not to see it. For expats from South Asia and the Gulf reconnecting with African heritage, this history resonates deeply. The Kushite story proves that Africa has always produced sophisticated, organized, powerful civilizations. It demolishes the false narrative that advanced culture originated only in Europe or the Mediterranean. It shows that leadership, innovation, and ambition have deep African roots. When you understand Kush, you're understanding a fundamental truth: your region's history is far more complex and powerful than mainstream narratives allow. That knowledge changes how you see the world. The Kushite Empire eventually declined as trade routes shifted and new powers emerged. By the 4th century CE, Aksum in Ethiopia rose to dominance. Meroe was abandoned. The pyramids fell silent. But the legacy never truly vanished. It lived on in the culture, language, and identity of people across the region. Today, historians and communities are reclaiming this story deliberately. They're refusing to let colonial-era erasure define their past. The Kushites ruled through military might, yes, but also through culture, commerce, and vision. That legacy survives. Here's the question: if Kushite pharaohs ruled Egypt for a century, shouldn't that be as famous as any Egyptian dynasty? Is it erasure, or just how history gets written? Tell me in the comments, fair or unfair.